your host, Enrique Solrosano, and today we have a very special guest. We're going to talk about the best of the year, and we have Mr. Kenai Andrews. Hello, Kenai, how are you?
I'm great, Enrique. Always a pleasure to hop on MMA Ground and Pound and talk the year in fights. What a year it was, wasn't it?
It was a hell of a year. So, uh, about Kenai, he's editor in chief at MMA Crossfire Nation. He is the host of the TKO countdown here at Barboner Network, and he is an MMA specialist. And first of all, I would like to welcome you to the Barboner TV network on Single TV channel 250. Please remember to download both the Barboner and Single TV apps in the respective app store on iOS and Android devices. Both apps are free. And while you download them, please make sure to rate and leave a comment. And Single TV is also available on Google Chromecast and Chromecast TV sticks, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku TV sticks, and also on all the smart TVs 2016 and forward. So yeah, can I? You're right. 2020, what a year, eh?
Yeah, it seems like everything was going normal, and then all of a sudden that thick fog that was COVID hit, and then there was like a thick haze that clouded the rest of the year. But I'm glad that we were able to get some fights in, thanks to the UFC leading the way with the bubble and everyone else kind of joining in.
Yeah, so actually, I think the UFC did a really good job. I talked about that my last show, and for today's show, we're gonna talk about the best fights of 2020. We're gonna talk about most disappointing fights of 2020.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about the best fighters of 2020, and looking forward to 2021. So, can I, like you said, we were fortunate and lucky enough to have great fights this 2020, and I think we had like at least two of the best fights ever. So for you, which were like the best fights this year?
Well, I think most people are chiming in with this fight, and I think I agree with them. I think we have to go with the strawweights, the female strawweights, with Wale Zhang and Joanna Jędrzejczyk early on in the year, really putting on a show with their title fight. It was an amazing fight, going back and forth, and we saw the damage those two inflicted on each other, and a razor-thin victory by Wale. That is, for me, the best fight in 2020, hands down.
Yeah, like actually that fight was crazy, and I remember that after that fight, I saw online the pictures of Joanna, and
Yeah.
she looked like an alien, right? Like
Hmm.
something else. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed that fight, and for me, one of the best fights was UFC 247 John Jones versus Dominic Reyes. What do you think
Right.
about that fight?
Yeah, that was a good fight too. I liked, a little bit controversial. Some people thought that Dominic won that fight, and looking back at that fight, I think they might have a point there. I think that was one of the closest fights that John Jones had in his title reign. But yeah, it was a good fight, and I think it established Dominic Reyes as a credible force in the light heavyweight division at that time.
Yes, I agree. Like a lot of people, they think that Dominic Reyes won that fight. I wouldn't go that far. Like I totally agree with you. I think it was John Jones' toughest fight to date.
Yeah.
But I don't think Dominic Reyes won. And like you said, also before this fight, I knew who Dominic Reyes was, but honestly, I was surprised to see him like fighting for the title. But I was surprised by his performance. I
Mm-hmm.
really like how he performed, and I don't know, like his mentality towards this fight is something I really liked.
Yeah, I agree. Like, he was aggressive. He didn't let John Jones do his thing. He made sure he pressured John Jones. He made him fight his fight, and in the process, he almost came out with the victory. And it definitely put him in a credible position, because as we saw, he went on to fight Blachowicz. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to duplicate that performance against Blachowicz, but at the very least, we're still talking about him at the end of 2020. So he obviously did something right.
Yes, of course. And like after that fight, I start thinking like two things. Like one of them is like maybe John Jones is getting older, or is
Yeah,
he's not as good, or two, maybe we're seeing a new breed of fighters. So
right.
what do you think?
Well, John Jones is definitely getting older. I think that's definitely a good point because before Dominic Reyes, we had seen like John Jones wasn't finishing his opponents with the creativity and the dominance that we had seen previously. We'd seen him with quite a few decision victories. So yeah, I think that's definitely a point. But you also have to tip your hat to Dominic Reyes. It's not easy to get in the cage with John Jones of any age, and he's still a great force. And as we might see in the heavyweight division this year or in 2021, I think John Jones was still quite good enough for us to give Dominic Reyes some credit in that fight.
Yes, for sure. And about John Jones' next step is something we're going to talk about a little bit later, which I'm very excited. And how about the flyweight division? Like UFC 256, Davison Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno, one of my
Yeah.
favorite fights.
hmm Yeah. I was cage side when Demetrius Johnson won the first UFC flyweight belt. That was at UFC 152 in Toronto, and he defeated I believe Joseph Bonavides for the belt then. And we've all seen the dominance that Demetrius Johnson had in the UFC division, but unfortunately, he did not captivate the general public during his title reign. So unfortunately, he did not. People just weren't enamored with the flyweight division during his reign. But now we see this guy come in, just demolishing guys, and he looks big and bad, and he's backing up, his personality, and then he's defending his belt back on back-to-back pay-per-views. That was amazing to go in and get that clean and tidy finish of Alex Perez there with the guillotine. And then in the next pay per view on short notice, because they needed somebody, just go in there and defend against. Well, he got the majority draw, but still, he would have won that fight if it wasn't for the eye pokes, his eye pokes. But to go in there and put on a classic fight with Brandon Moreno, you got to tip your hat to the guy.
Yes, of course. It was like amazing what they did. Like both of them, they came back to fight 3 weeks after that. So there, it's
Yeah,
supposed that after a fight, you have to be like 3 months without like any type of contact. So
right.
these guys, they stepped up, and honestly, I knew why Moreno was the number one contender, but it was a hell of a fight. And for me, I think Moreno won that fight.
Okay. Yeah, and you're not alone. A lot of people think that Moreno won that fight. It's tough to say. I mean, I personally think Davison won that fight, but we'll never know. I mean, those eye pokes were such obviously an influence in that fight. But unfortunately, we get to see it again because Dana White is on record as saying that those two are going to rematch. So we get the best of both worlds.
Yes, actually, my pet here, Manchas, who was here with me, she agrees with me that Moreno won that fight. So yeah, we had amazing fights this 2020, but now let's talk about the other side of the coin, so to
Mm.
speak. So like, do you have like, can you remember any fight that wasn't like what you expected?
Um, there were a few fights there, but I think the one for me was probably Kevin Holland and Jacare. I knew that Jacare was, he was older and he was in the twilight of his career, but to see him get finished the way he did by Kevin Holland, that was unbelievable. Like, I know that it's been said that Andrei Arlovsky had a similar type of finish way back in the day, but I had never seen that fight and had never really seen anyone since put somebody away in the manner that Kevin Holland did, and I think it just kind of punctuated the type of year he had. Being so active. I think he had what was it, five fights this year and 5 wins. You have to go back to Neil Magny to see that kind of activity. I think that was my unexpected moment of the year, hands down.
Well, yeah, like you said, I'm a huge fan of Jacare Souza. But yeah, Kevin Holland, he's on a streak. He's 5-0 this year. And he actually beat Israel Adesanya to this record. So he's
Right.
something else. But like for I had like some disappointing fights, and the one that it's at the top of my head, it's UFC 248, Israel Adesanya versus Yoel Romero. What do you
Yeah, I
think?
think. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that was a very disappointing fight. I mean, it was obviously like Anderson Silva, Damian Maia part two. Uh, you know, uh, Romero just sits there, and then Israel just sits there. But as the challenger, you have to push the fight. You have to go after the champion because or else you're just not going to win. So I kind of blame Yoel Romero more than Israel Adesanya in that fight. But yeah, that was definitely a disappointing one. And another one that actually didn't happen, but I still classified as a disappointment, Enrique, is Tony Ferguson Habib, because that was supposed to happen at UFC 249. And what happened? COVID hit. Habib was trapped in Russia. He couldn't get out because of the traveling restrictions. And instead, we saw Ferguson lose in an upset of one of the upsets of the year to Justin Gaethje. And we may never see that fight again because I don't know if Ferguson is ever the same again after the beatings he took from Gaethje and from Oliveira earlier, just recently. So major disappointment.
Yeah, like that fight, I think it's caused by the gods of MMA. Like it has been planned like 6 times now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something like very, very sad what's going with Tony Ferguson. And I don't know why, like if it's something physical, if it's something psychological. And like these last two fights, I saw him like different physically speaking, right? I think
Yeah.
for Gage's fight, he had to cut weight like twice,
Yeah.
which obviously takes a toll on you, right? And
Yeah.
for this last fight, I like saw him no ill. I won't say ill or sick, but he looked very thin.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if it's something regarding like his weight loss like method or something like that. But I hope we can see him back. But I don't know. I don't think we're gonna have that fight, Khabib versus Ferguson.
Yeah, I have to agree because Habib's retired. Sure, he might come back, but Ferguson has now lost two straight and two convincingly straight. I know I'm with you. Like psychologically, you heard him talk after that fight, like he's trying to justify his performance there, and there's a lot of questions with Tony Ferguson right now. I don't know if we're ever going to see it.
Yeah, like I was surprised about his what he said because he's like, I didn't lose, or I don't know. He needs to go back to the drawing board. And now that we're talking about the Jacare Souza, obviously when we see that kind of performance from those fighters, from those legendary fighters, we like instantly think about retirement. So talking about disappointments, another fight that it was a disappointment for me, it was Robbie Lawler versus Neil Magny.
Mm-hmm.
Because on that fight, we saw a Robbie Lawler that it's very different than the one we saw against, I forgot the name, this guy, Rory McDonald.
Oh yeah, that was another all-time great fight. Yeah, definitely a different version of Robbie Lawler. Absolutely, but in some defense of Robbie Lawler, these fights that he's had, they haven't been great matchups stylistically for him. Like they've been, remember the fight against Ben Askren. Ben Askren being a great wrestler. They've been able to negate the striking that Lawler is known for. And it was these fights that he's lost. They just weren't great matchups for him, I think.
Yeah, like you said, MMA is a lot about styles, matchups, right? But honestly, I don't see on this Robbie Lawler like the drive. I don't see him like driven or hungry, like they said on Rocky movies, right? But now let's talk about the best fighters of 2020. It's a tough choice to make, but who are your best fighters of this year?
Best fighters of the year. Yeah, there's plenty to choose from. There's Valentina Shevchenko. She had a dominant year. Two big wins there, beating Caitlin Chokian and Jennifer Maya there. She definitely left no question as to who the top dog was there in her division. Going across the pond, I got to give props to Alicia Rodriguez there, taking the Muay Thai belt away from Stamp Fairtex there at one championship. That was a phenomenal fight for her, and really kind of brought her into the forefront. She raised a lot of eyebrows with the performance there. Obviously, Davison, great performance. So those are the ones that kind of ring out to me. What about you?
Well, even though this 2020 was kind of chaotic, we saw a lot of talent in MMA. Like, for example, the fighters you just mentioned, and like the one that it's like very famous now is Kamsat Chimaev, this fighter from
KC,
Sweden.
yeah.
He is 9-0, and he has been smashing guys. Like he has 3 wins this year,
Right.
and his last fight lasted 17 seconds.
Yeah. He's definitely the guy that really lit a fire, and he's kind of like indicative of that the whole year in terms of being given an opportunity and making the most of it. Like, that guy really made the most of his opportunities. He got the attention of Dana White very quickly, and now he's a hot commodity. Everyone wants to see him fight. I think he's scheduled to fight Leon Edwards next, I believe. So let's see what he can do against Rocky.
Yes, because a lot of people have said that he hasn't faced like top 10 guys, top 5, which is fair, right? So that's going to be a good test for him.
Yeah.
And another guy that took the opportunity to shine, it's Brandon Moreno, because he was in the UFC, then he was released from the UFC,
Right.
then he came back, became number 1 contender, and now like he gave us one of the best flyweights fights I think ever.
Yeah, another guy who really made the most of the second chance and is now a hot commodity. And that's what the fighters should be aiming for. Like, you get a shot, you get an opportunity to get in there. I mean, you should take it and try to make the most of it, because as we have seen, you can do a lot more with an opportunity now than perhaps when things get back to normal, because there's going to be a lot more fighters. The pecking order is going to be a lot bigger, and there'll be there's just less opportunity when things go back to normal. So you got to give kudos to these guys for taking that chance, stepping up on short notice or whatever, and stepping up and making the most of their shot.
Yes, I totally agree. You have to step up, right? And like this 2020, we had this terrible thing, the pandemic, and unfortunately, one of the best MMA fighters was affected by it, Khabib Nurmagomedov, who lost his dad due to this virus. But it's amazing how he cemented his legacy on this 2020. What do you think about Khabib?
Yeah, he's definitely one of the best of all time. I think the best lightweight of all time, unquestionably. The dominance that he had in the division is, you can't deny what he was able to do. Finishing the finishes, the way he did it. He obviously beat Conor McGregor, one of his most memorable fights. And then the style, beating the guy. And even beating the guy in a merciful way. We saw what he did to Justin Gaethje there. That was one of the most merciful things he did there, when he simply armbarred the guy. I mean, he could have done so many other things, but to put the guy away without a relatively minimal injury and still maintain your dominance. I mean, he is a true example of what a mixed martial artist should be, kind of in the reign of George St. Pierre. Now, you can't say much more than that.
Exactly, I totally agree, because I I think that you have to be a champ inside the octagon and outside the octagon. And something I admire a lot about Khabib is how he carry himself outside the octagon, right? And
Absolutely.
so those are the fighters. So now, we have 2021 around the corner, and we have some stuff prepared for this new year. So, what are you looking forward to 2021?
I'm hoping that things return to normal as quickly as possible. I think the UFC is on the right track there. They seem to be determined and to keep the fights going. And fortunately, the other organizations, Bellator, One Championship, are following suit. So I expect things to get better, and we get to see some more amazing fights. I mean, as a fight fan, that's all you can ask for.
Yes, for sure. And something I loved about this year, it was that we had MMA every week. Every Saturday there was a fight. So
Mhm.
this year is not going to be like that, but we're going to start the year with the bang with UFC 257, Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor.
Right. Yeah, that should be good. A rematch of those two. We all know that McGregor won the first one. Poirier should be more experienced, having fought Habib and Dan Hooker earlier this summer. That was another great fight, actually, in the summer. So let's see what Poirier can do and equalize things.
Yes, like for that one, it's gonna be very interesting because both fighters are very different fighters now. Like we saw what McGregor achieved now, but Dustin Poirier, he's like a great contender. He's a very good martial artist as well, and we will see if McGregor has become like very confident. Right? Maybe he stopped training and focus on some other stuff. And well, I'm looking forward for Stipe Miocic versus John Jones. It's
Yeah.
gonna be a, a great a great fight. So well, that's so sorry. So where can we hear your show? Can I or where can we reach you?
Well, TKO Countdown airs each Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can check us out here on the Barn Burner TV network and Zingo TV channel 250, 6 p.m. Sundays, and hope to see you there.
Well, thanks again, Kenai. Thanks for being here in the show. Always a pleasure talking MMA with you. And check out Kenai's show. As you can see, he knows a lot about MMA and he's very passionate about it, which I admire. And well, thanks again for watching. And remember, no UFC, no MMA this week. Tune in Mondays for results and analysis, and Wednesdays for predictions and analysis at 7 p.m. Follow Barboner Network at Barboner Net. We are on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. And remember, this is a conversation. Let me know what you think at Enrique Drums MX. The show can also be heard on the Barboner Radio Network on its 122 platforms. Please check out barboner.ca for all the news. Barboner, watch it, hear it, read it, download it, leave it. I'll see you on the next one. Happy New Year and thanks, Kenai.
Thank you.